All right, family, welcome back. So, here for another conversation with DDM CEO Neil Nelson. And I like to call these things views from the C suite myself, right? And just get a little bit of perspective on a few different things. We've talked about a lot. Neil, one of the things I know we were speaking on was the narratives that undermine black male and female relationships. So, if you were to look online, and follow that path, you might think these relationships, in terms of our community with male and females, are in shambles. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that they're interesting conversations. I think we have to think about them within the context that they're occurring, right? I think that what we're seeing happening on a certain level are can really be explained in a number of ways with varying degrees of accuracy. And so, people who are interested in talking about this social media rift that's happening in black female relationships often take, uh, I think, very narrow approaches to look at it. My approach is different. My approach is to look at it in the context of a social system. And so, in every society, men and women come together to create the most basic unit of the social system, and that is the family. And so, if you have an issue, or if you have a situation where there are issues, where there is uh, ongoing disagreements and disputes taking place between the at the most basic level of the social system, then you have to ask the question, what could be causing that? And I think that in line with our other conversations that we've had, Jose, about other parts of the community, it really starts with understanding what is the expectations that people are coming to those relationships with. And when we start looking at that, we realize that black men and black women are coming to these conversations, coming to the relationship with divergent experiences and divergent expectations, and there aren't institutions in place to help them um, regain alignment on expectations and behavior. And so, when you have this kind of conflict, it's often because things are falling apart at a much deeper and more fundamental level of the social system. And in the key to understanding what is going on there is to look at the values and look at the purpose that people are coming to these situations with. And Dr. Marimbani calls that the asili, the cultural seed. The cultural seed is what informs the values, the mores, and the purpose of the culture. We talked in previous conversations about having a mission, having a mandate from heaven, if you will. Um, and within the African cultural context, it's been this idea that we are to replicate a social system that reflects the cosmic and natural laws that governs existence. And that is how we as African people have known that our system was in a was truthful or just. Is that, well, does this align with, quote unquote, what God intends? Because what God intends is not written in a book somewhere by a person who has a revelation, but is written in nature. It's written in the cosmos. That's the only place that God probably write anything that He wants everyone to know is in the cosmos, in nature. And so uh, we having drifted, meaning black people having drifted away from that asili, from that cultural seed, which means we've also drifted away from the values and the mores and the purpose of our culture. Our most basic social institution, the family, is in discord, or is we're having conflict in the family unit between the men and the women because we are no longer in alignment with that, and so we're confused as to be like, well, what's the new thing? What's the thing that we should be in alignment with? So I think that's how I think about this.
Where does Kevin Samuels fit into all this, Neil? Because that's where a lot of people is. He in the cosmos writing? Is he still adding anything valuable to this? Because I mean, I feel like a lot of the women. Well, I would say this: a lot of the conversation came to a head when Kevin Samuels started addressing things most recently, and we see a number of people speaking on what Black love is. I mean, what can we do? What would a healthy and empowering narrative be for the Black family, for these relationships? Possible.
Yeah, I think there's a lot there. Kevin Samuels in particular, we could have a whole conversation about what his, the value or lack thereof that he brought to the conversation. May he rest in peace. However, I would rather focus on, and that's a different conversation. But I'm not trying to avoid it. But I think the more I think urgent question is what can we do about it, right? And I think that we have to go back to understanding again why do we need to have these family units? What's the purpose of it? And why do we not have them working the way they should? What's wrong is more obvious, and what's caused the error. We live in a world today that many scholars call a very liberal society, and the liberal nature of the society tells us or informs us. The asili of Western European liberal society informs us that what we feel like doing individually is the most important thing in consideration, and we should evaluate the world first and foremost and almost exclusively from a individualistic perspective. We should construct our own moral ethos. We should form our own cultural asili by ourselves, for ourselves, and then we should then, and the way to facilitate harmony in the world is for us to respect every other person's purpose, morals, ethics, and so on and so forth. Well, that's a recipe for disaster, right? And we've seen that unfold over the last several decades. Historically, almost every civilization that is worthy of being called a civilization across every planet, I'm sorry, not planet, every continent, and among all people, has recognized that morality and at least is informed by something inherent in reality itself, and that human beings at their best are not trying to construct their own moral codes, but are trying to uncover to get better clarity on what is at the core of reality as it relates to what the moral code should be. It's a difference in orientation. One is a search for an earnest that should correspond with something bigger, and it ends, as I said earlier, the African approach has been, well, what's writ large in the cosmos, right? What's writ large in nature? Let's use those laws and principles to inform how we create our moral code in our society, our laws, our precepts. When you have this liberal model, everyone begins to construct their own thing, and everyone begins to have their own expectations of what you should do in relation to them. And that's why you have this beef about whether it should be 50-50, whether you should pay for everything if you're a man, whether you should come to the table being 6 foot tall with six pack with abs that look like you're a world class athlete and have at least $100,000 in income. All of these expectations are based on individuals trying to work out for themselves what they think the other should do for them in the context of the relationship. When you have that perspective and you don't make sure that somebody else has share that with you, it's a recipe for disaster. So if you and I enter into a business relationship, as an example, I'll say, and I come to it with a certain way in which I want to do business, and I expect for you to do business, and we don't have, and you come with another set of expectations, and on for me and for yourself, if those two expectations set are not uh, coherent, they don't overlap, and a lot, we're going to have a lot of conflicts. And so this is why we have the situation in the community is that we have a disjointed set of expectations. And so the way to readjoin and to bring coherence and to union to those sets of expectations is to have is to revitalize the cultural asili of our people. And while there's great diversity in the African continent and for African people around the world, historically, over the long stretch, over the millennia, we do have some commonality that our scholars have identified. And one of those I mentioned earlier is to build society and build society's values and mores and prioritization of values and mores and goals based on what's writ large in the cosmos and in nature.
Interesting point, Neil, when you talk about the individualism. I think we're in an age of hyper individualism. I think you and I were part of an interesting conversation on the continent as it relates to even Barack and Michelle Obama, and even how they seemingly showed up or were showing up most recently. Now, it's all speculative, right? But, I know that one of the aspects of one of the sisters that was speaking was just that, hey, she may have just decided I'm going to do me in this instance. And I think that they've been, well, a lot of relationships that are put in the forefront publicly are oftentimes looked at as relationship goals. How do you, or how would you suggest, we look at things that we may be seeing, we don't know the backstory, but I know it kind of left me with the impression that perhaps they weren't on the same accord. I'll say that for myself personally. But, how do we begin to redefine how we look at relationship goals? We're always looking at them externally as opposed to looking at them internally. What would you say to the men and women that, are looking to get this asili that you're speaking to, back in alignment? What would we need to do?
Yeah, I think we have to look at the radical liberal approach towards family and family construction and family maintenance for what it is, which is that it's a departure, at least, from what African people have done, Black folks have done for several thousand years that has worked for us, and that is to understand that the goal of relationship is not just for your personal enjoyment. That's going to always be a recipe for disaster if the highest uh, good that you're pursuing is your personal enjoyment in the here and now. That has always worked. That's always failed, rather. It has always created, it always is the framework from which societies fall apart. When you get to a stage in society where everyone is out for their own personal thing, you're not close from collapse, from societal collapse. And so I would suggest that we move away from that uh, as fast as possible to a safe distance, because whoever is at that end,
Yeah.
they're going to have problems, and that's true for both men and women. And we see that, we see that when young people are more concerned with enjoying the good life now, they spend less time studying, preparing for their adult lives, which is where most of the time is spent, is adult life with responsibilities, and they're unable to uh, effectively uh, navigate the terrain of being an adult in modern society when they have spent most of their youth having fun and pursuing leisure and pleasure. The same thing applies, I think, in relationship, where people come to it with, I'm here to get as much as I can get out of this for me. as opposed to the way that I think African people have looked at it. Again, we know that there's diversity across the continent in different nations and ethnic groups, but there are some similarities. And so within the context of the similarities, the way that it's been looked at is that the family is a place for development, first and foremost. So when a man and a woman comes together, they're supposed to help each other develop further. So your family has done some level of development in society, but the two of you together in a closely tight knitted embrace should create an environment for mutual development. And then beyond that, to create children, to have children that can serve as that can be raised optimally, so that they can actually then serve as solutions for the society. Every in the Bantu Congo, Dr. Fukiao says that in their cosmogony rather, in the study of it in the cosmology, the purpose of every person is to is to grow up, to mature, and become a master. And by mastering something of value to the society, and a part of that maturation process is in the bonds of that relationship of man and woman, but also that you raise children who eventually become medicine for society. They solve society's problem. If you are concerned more about getting a Birkin bag, or you're more concerned about getting as many girls as you can get as a priority, and therefore evaluate and how good you look showing up with each other out in the community, if those are your highest priority and goals, then you're going to look at people that have those as your criteria. But the question is, are those people evolving? Are they becoming better people? Are they producing and raising children that are the medicine to for our community and the world? Or are they only good and to look at because they look a certain way, but beyond the facade of their appearance, it's a rot, it's decay, and therefore they are contributing more to the decline and the problems in the society than solutions.
Last question for you, Neil. I wanted to just get your thoughts on the level of competition in relationships between black men and black women. It seems like with the advance, a lot of black women are obviously doing very well. A lot more education than was previously noted, but it seems to be that seems to be problematic, or the narrative in the media sometimes that is really projected to us is that perhaps we're at odds, and that is one of the reasons why. So how do we get past this competitive side and get back to the more meaningful thing?
Yeah, Jose, I'm a pragmatist, and so I believe that the things that we ought to do, as far as black men and black women, is to really reground ourselves on solid cultural foundation. And I know that a lot of people are talking about using Christianity or Islam or any other religion as a basis for having the discussion about family. And I think that that has historically worked, and it can work if, though, both men and women are coming to it with a similar appreciation for and share in that religious tradition. But what we've seen as well is that there is a departure, there is a breaking away, a falling away of people adhering to their traditional Christian, Muslim, or Jewish, in the West at least, Jewish traditions. And what that means then is that you still have more women who are historically staying in the church, and men are not finding any value in there. So I think that that's likely to not produce the results anymore that it did in the past. And so every society goes through this these cycles of, just like a human life cycle, where it's birth, it goes through its youth phase, it gets mature, it goes through its adult phase, it gets mature, and then there's decline. And so we are in one of those phases, in both globally as a whole species, but also as a group, meaning Black folks. And we should take this time to look at how do we borrow from the past in the spirit of Sankofa. How do we look back and see what has worked, not just in a particular time, but across many epochs in our history? There is certainly, as I said before, we've had a Christian period in our history under European colonization and slavery. We've acquired that primarily for West Africans and their descendants in the diaspora. We know that East Africa had Christian traditions before European colonization of Africa. And so we've also had an Islamic era, and we've also had a Hebrew Jewish era. But those are no longer providing the kind of medicine. The asili of those traditions are no longer as impactful in transforming and preparing our people as they did in the past. And that's not just true for us, it's true for other people, Europeans and others as well. The societies are also coming under significant duress and showing signs of fatigue from these particular models. And so when this happens, a people, or at least the elite or the wise among a people, look back across many of those periods and say, what is the consistent theme or consistent patterns that have worked historically? Go back and bring them forward. And I think that's what we have to do if we want to resolve these kinds of relational conflicts that we're having between Black men and Black women at the family level, is to go back and find patterns of family structures that have been most successful for our people over the last several thousand years, and bring them forward to help heal our people. Because ultimately, it is not going to come because we present better arguments or because men become more open to considering a woman's emotion, or a woman become more open to understanding a man's plight. Those are the solution doesn't lie there. It lies at a higher level, a meta level of consciousness, which says there is a greater purpose for which to live. And that greater purpose, that greater principle that comes out of that, then inform the lower level, and we have a better world in which we come, better world and space that we come to each other with this renewed share of mission, purpose,
Summed it up right life. There it is. Man, appreciate you. Another insightful conversation, man. Looking forward to the next one.